Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, well, welcome to ADHD Awakening, the podcast where we break the curse of what you thought ADHD was and awaken to the blessing in disguise. This is where we learn to support ourselves, love ourselves, and see ADHD as the unique gift it is when properly cared for. It's also where we change the intro probably every time because we are giving ourselves permission to do things divergently.
Yes. And imperfectly.
Imperfectly, and just do what feels right. And that's what we're talking about today. So we're going to talk about, well, a few things related to this. We're also going to tell the story of how the podcast came to be because it's a really good example of allowing yourself to diverge. But I kind of want to kick it off with that word. Like, if we think about it, right? Neurodivergence, to diverge is to do something differently. And if we don't allow ourselves to do whatever it is differently, we're kind of blocking the magic that is neurodivergence. So we're going to kick it off with, I think, some of the mantras we've used to keep ourselves in that energy of letting things be messy, because that makes magic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Messy all the time. No.
Indeed.
It's a beautiful mess.
Oh my gosh.
Can't make fancy art without mess. So
can I tell a quick crazy manifestation story?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I was hoping you just go for it.
Yeah. So, all right. Yesterday, we have a whole thing. We bought an RV. We're like phase 1, we're taking it to Burning Man. Phase 2, we're selling all our stuff and giving away our stuff and moving into it. It's gonna be wild. It's gonna be amazing. On our way home from this camping trip yesterday, we were like, okay, we need to manifest someone that's like good with like electrical, who can like redo the sound system for us, hook up like a backup camera and make like, the pimp out the inside in that way. And we come home, and this is like such a parallel story to how I even met my person. It's a whole thing. But we come home, and my friend who's house sitting in my house, who happens to be a former client of mine, we're chatting and we're just like connecting and just having a great time. And I was like, oh, fuck, by the way, Justin, did you know that he's an electrician? And Justin was like, oh, no way. And he was like, yeah. And he was like, well, do you think you could do some work on the RV? And he was like, I would love to. He's like, here's the photos of like my cars that I've pimped out, like with all the sound systems and electrical. I like made a subwoofer in the trunk. Like the whole thing became like an art car. And we were like, shut the fuck up. And he's like, this is my app for like the lighting in my house and like how I can like change it with the moods. And like, he's like so hyped to do this with us. And we're like, you're going to come out to the
casually perfect.
Yeah. And that crazy, like, same thing happened. Like, I took this leap. I, went to Tulum with my ex, and I finally like heard this, like, this is not your person. Your person is out there. And it was so devastating and but freeing to hear that and know that finally. And I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? And I felt the universe tell me to like write down my best case scenario. Like, what would I want, like, in a new place and all that. And so I wrote it all down, journaled while I was there on vacation with my ex. And I was like, I want to live in a surf shack. Like, I want to live walking distance from the beach. Roxy's never alone, tons of natural light. And literally I come home, and the girl that's staying in my house sitting for me, is like, I walk in the door, and she's like, Kim, I need to tell you something. She's like, I'm so sorry. I just moved in with our mutual friend, Lindsay, and I'm like allergic to the house. Like, I'm allergic to sawdust of all things. And she does woodworking, and like, I can't live there. I had to go to the ER, and I haven't told her yet. And I'm freaking out, and I need to like find a replacement roommate like ASAP. And I heard again, that's for you. And it was just like freaking mind blowing, like how the universe works, and when we can trust and let go and like not like force things or think that we have to like manifest the money first, and just like allow the universe to work magic in our lives. Like, it's just bananas. It's bananas.
Oh my God.
Like, perfect idea.
Okay.
It's like, that's our life of letting go. Like, the moment you let go, things happen.
Yeah. Oh, and the
I
other
love
thing, so
that. Like,
not just an electrician, but like an awakened electrician, like a creative and like a freaking
yes.
visionary, you know, and
Yeah.
he totally is
Mhm.
neurodivergent. And like when we have someone who's like awakened and conscious, like everything that comes through them is so expansive and so out of the box. And there's no limits. We're going to put a disco ball in the
Yes.
freaking front with like a mirror, infinity mirror behind it. Like,
See, okay.
I love it.
I feel like Kim, right now, you're the poster child for like I don't even want to say messy magic, but I feel like a lot of people, if you don't give yourself permission for things to be uncertain,
Mm,
you don't get that attainment of that level of magic. Like, I feel like what you're describing right now, right, is the fact that these things are happening around all the time. And I feel like for everybody, but I feel like you ADHDers have like a unique opportunity to be able to embrace this because we're already so open, which is
mhm,
hilariously what leads us
Yeah.
to like for things to be messy. But
mhm.
the other side of that coin is
Mhm.
it's easier for us to be open to these opportunities. So when you
Yeah.
like what everything you just described would freak the fuck out. Like would freak out a person who thinks that life is checklist, right? Where it's
Mm,
like, "Ooh, I gotta this job, this place, this da da da." You're talking about the
yes.
RV. You're like, "We're gonna sell our stuff. We're gonna da da da," because you're living the magic messy life that only
Mhm.
someone who's open to that level can
Yeah.
live. And that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
mm,
you. And I
you're
was
welcome. Thank
not
you.
always there. Let me freaking
Right.
tell you. I had the
Yeah.
cookie cutter life, like that life with my ex. We had a house, we had
Yeah.
a dog, we had a yard,
Mhm.
and like we like did all the things, checked all the boxes. I had a good job and
Oh
like
yeah, Roxy's a
all
dachshund, by the way. Roxy the
yeah.
doxy. She's so cute. Okay.
The
It's
cutest.
true.
The
She's
sweetest.
laying next to my husband right now on the couch, just getting pets.
Sorry, yeah, you're saying ticking the boxes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh yeah. I had the cookie cutter life. I had it all like everything was in a row. I worked at the hospital and we had our little life and it was like the American dream. Like it truly was. And I was
But
just
was
like,
it?
what was it? Yeah.
But was it? I'm asking
Yeah.
you.
No,
Thank you, Paige.
it was in that it literally like was what I thought was
Yeah.
what's going to bring happiness.
Yeah.
And I went to college for 7 years, got this master's degree, and like went into this thing and found the guy, and everything was like cookie cutter perfect, but I was like so unsettled, and I was like, there's got to be more. And I was like, had achieved everything in my career. I had this nice salary and like all this stuff, and I had worked so hard to get there. And
Mhm.
it was terrifying to imagine leaving it all. And I left both
Yeah.
things. I left that job at the hospital. I left my ex, and it was the scariest shit I've ever done. And it has led to the most beautiful, magical, freaking crazy life that it was beyond my wildest dreams.
Well, it's funny because everything you're saying is what we're trained from childhood to do. It's like, what are your dreams? What are you going to do when you're old? And I'm like,
Mm.
why are we focusing on an external thing when we should be focusing on what choice are you going to make that's going to make you feel good
Yeah.
Mhm.
long term? Because
Yeah.
everything we're doing that's why we have this attachment to everything, is because there's an end goal. Whereas like every day you should have that goal of, how do I want to feel? And how can I feel
Yeah.
that way? Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
every single thing in your existence can be gone in a second. Like
Mm.
nothing, long-term jobs, like it doesn't matter. All of it can be gone. And that's where I've started seeing more change in my life. It's like, I'm trying to focus less on like what's actually physically here and how do I
Mhm.
embody that feeling? How do I create that with my kids? How do I
Mm.
Yeah.
experience this daily? Because I was so focused for so many years on fixing what my family life looked like. What did my house look like? What did my bank account look like? I was focused on changing everything rather
Yeah.
than embracing where I was, what I had, and how I wanted to feel. I didn't actually even think about those things. And when I was
Mm.
younger, that's all I thought about.
Mhm.
When I was
Yeah.
little, like, it was like, I don't
Mhm.
care. I don't care what I'm going to do when I go to college. I don't care what I do here. It's like, how do I want to
Yeah.
feel? And I was manifesting like crazy. Like, I don't know if I told you guys this, but like when I first met my husband, I mean, he lived around the block from me. And when I was 12, I saw him in the alley cleaning his car. And he worked at a bank at the time. So he had like a suit on. And I was like, ooh, Matt Tripp, I'm going to marry that guy. And I went inside, told my
What?
mom, and I was like, I'm totally marrying him. Like, he doesn't even realize it. And like, he would come to my family parties and everyone was like, you're such a nerd. Like, there's no way he's even looking at you. And I was like, yeah, he probably not, but he doesn't know it. He's going to marry me. He's not meant to look at me yet. And sure enough, like it all played out.
Wow.
And then as it played out, then the fear set in and you tried to control it, try to fix it and make it a certain way. And it has to be this way. It has to do that. And then everything
Yeah.
fucking fell apart. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, that sucks. And now in this new space again, where I'm like, well, I had everything. I had my dream job. I had all my kids. I had the house I wanted. I had my husband, and it all felt like shit. Now I'm like, okay, well, what do I want to feel? Like, I don't give a shit about any of
Yes.
this. Take it all. Like, I'll move today. Like, I don't care. Leave it all. Let's start fresh. And that's where I am. And I'm feeling more safe in that area where it's like, once you start to feel safe, like, how do we feel safe in that letting go of, I don't have that. I don't have that yet. I'm not there yet. Okay, but where are you?
Yes.
You're missing everything because you might not ever get there because you might not make it to that point. So you're making it now.
Yeah.
So do it and yeah, be yourself, enjoy yourself.
I think like a
away.
lot of what you guys are describing is like there are beautiful things about, like, first of all, I think neurodivergence is, because it's so funny because that means like divergence from what, right? Like from the norm. And it's like socially we're a lot more comfortable with doing that than, and it's almost like just a descriptive word for how we behave. Like we are divergent. Like we are, I feel like people who are neurodivergent more often than not are just people who never stop believing in magic. And you noticed that feeling of creep in of, this isn't how I should feel, because I feel like what you're describing is the way pretty much every adult feels. And it's common to just accept that as the feeling of adulthood. And it's like, no, adulthood doesn't mean crushing existential, just like, this is it, this is all there is. It's like, because we weren't taught to maintain that connection to ourselves that we inherently had, right, as kids. And some people lose that very, very early, others it's later. And I think you remember what it felt like. It's like we're kind of diverging back to that, to come home to ourselves, right? To like, if we weren't taught to break from what felt good, we wouldn't build lives that we needed to rip down. And you know, thinking about unpacking that is just, it's difficult, but it's not insurmountable, because I feel like we have all three of us like have built careers and certain aspects of our lives that appear unchangeable. And it's like, nothing's unchangeable. Like the house, the career, is it scary to go through the process of like, you know, peeling back those layers? Absolutely. That's why most people don't do it. But it's like, it's so worth going through that tunnel, because the rainbow's so bright on the other end. And it sounds so cliche, but it's true. It's like, you can get back to believing in magic. And that is messy. It does inherently involve like a rejection of the societal neatness of what, you know, we are grown up trained to want. It's a conscious rejection of all of that. And I feel like in order to, you know, accept the gift of magic, you've got to be okay with the messiness, like the middle's messy.
Yes.
I just wrote down a river. It says unchanged is dried up. Like a river is always flowing. It's always moving. It's always excavating. It's always like on the surface, it looks sometimes peaceful, like it's not moving, but it is constantly going. So being unchanged, you're dried up. You're done. You're like,
love that.
what's the point? You know, it's not flowing.
Yeah. I want to circle back to this question, and I think you said it, Paige. How do I feel safe in uncertainty, right? Because
that's a good one.
Yeah.
I remember as I was like questioning things with my ex, like it was like a 6-month period where I was up every night. Like I was like insomniac again, like couldn't sleep, like just wrestling with this uncertainty and this mega question. Like we built this life together. We've been together 8 years. We had a house, dog, a whole 9 years. I had like, it was impossible to think about leaving, but I kept having these feelings. And um yeah, like I want to pitch it back to you guys. Like what are some things that you have found to feel safe in uncertainty?
Well, for
Hmm.
me, I instantly, as I'm going through it, so like I just actually found my diagnosis of ADHD the other day because as I was purging my house and cleaning,
Oh.
I'm like, where the heck did I put this? I had no clue where I put it. And I opened it up and I was like laughing. It was like, it hasn't even been 2 years since I've been diagnosed. I thought it was over three. I thought it was like,
Mm,
I feel like I've gone through so much. And just this past month, I feel like the uncertainty has been so much in my life that I ground it now in daily intentions, like
mm,
really just focusing on what is it that I want to feel,
yeah.
and then stopping and checking myself, like, okay, what am I feeling right now? And I'm like, I'm feeling fucking freaked out.
Mm.
My kids are starting school, I feel all their energy, so instantly I'm like, okay, well, what do I want everyone to feel? And it is literally just the slowing down process of purging out. So every day I'm like back into my old routine. I'm purging out breath work wise. Like I do the Kabbalah and then I
Mm-hmm.
purge out any thoughts I don't want. And then I did a 20-minute silent meditation where it was no music, nothing. And I just breathed in for 5 seconds, held for 5 seconds, breathed out for 5 seconds, and then held at the bottom. And I did this for 20 minutes and it went by so fast, but I'm realizing that I just have to build the strength of feeling comfortable in the unknown, in
Mm,
the not knowing, and being okay with no answers. And then from there, just setting the intention of like, how do I want to feel? And it's
mm,
just, if I can cultivate that day how I want to feel, which is just peaceful and happy, then I've accomplished it. And I feel like if we don't slow down enough to just catch our
yeah.
breath or just to center ourselves, we can't feel
Yeah.
safe.
Mm,
We
Yeah.
won't be able to feel safe at all.
Yeah.
yeah. So good.
I think like for me, probably the biggest thing besides meditation, because I feel like that's essential. Like if you're not
Mm,
taking time in your day to do whatever meditation looks like for you, some version
Yeah.
of getting still and listening. Like learning to listen to
mm,
yourself is the number one because
yeah.
I felt constricted for like several years before I started realizing that there were solutions out. Like when you build your life a certain way, right? And your nervous system is all kind of dysregulated within it, you're kind of like, I can't change this. It's like you've put yourself in a box and now you can't find your way out. And it
Mm,
Yeah.
requires like allowing yourself to acknowledge that feeling and then to believe that perhaps that feeling's not okay. I think just following that thread
yeah.
and allowing yourself to get, because even doing that is scary. Like acknowledging that you don't feel well, I mean, it opens up the question, okay, what do I do from here? And I think my biggest tool has been journaling because like
Mm-hmm.
I stopped journaling for a number of years. Like I've always done it. I started in like grade 1 and like I've always for years I got disconnected from it and those were the years that I was the most disconnected from myself. And I'm like, okay, that's not an
Mm-hmm.
accident. I feel like whatever
Yeah.
your journaling practice it is, even if it's just like I've seen people do it so many different ways, just doodling and whatever and it doesn't have to be cohesive, doesn't even have to make sense, but it
No.
helps you to access those parts of your brain that don't want to acknowledge what you're feeling. And it helps you
Mm,
once it's on paper, it's really hard to ignore, but you still don't have to do anything right away. It's just like, okay,
yeah.
so we can sort of like work with this.
Yeah.
So doing that every day. And I think that's what helped me to start asking questions. Like I remember one day I was journaling and it started to dawn on me that the way my life was set up was not the way I would choose it if I were starting over. Like I thought,
Mm,
okay, knowing what you know now, would you choose this life now? And you can
Mhm.
ask that question with reference to relationships, with your job. It's like, if I was starting over, the best thing ever someone ever told me was, it's better to be at the bottom of a ladder you want to climb than at the top of one you don't. I was like,
Oof.
holy. And I think,
Let's add on
you
to
know,
that. There's actually no top to the ladder in this life. So just remember that.
yeah, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. But it's like, it's better to start over authentically. And
Yeah.
I couldn't get that out of my head after I heard it. I was like, why, just because I've made these choices doesn't mean I have to live and die
Mhm.
by them. It's like, okay, I'm up for a
Yeah.
promotion. Like, do I even care about the promotion? Would I pick this career again? No. And
Yeah.
I think just that permission to diverge. Also the why not me? Because I look around and think,
Mm.
okay, other people make decisions that feel better to them. Why not me? It's like, oh, I couldn't
Mm.
possibly, how come? And then just
Yes.
journaling and sitting in that uncertainty.
And it's really
It-
funny. As you're talking, I had to take a note about your journaling because
Yeah.
I struggle with it.
Mm.
And so the idea just came to me. So I'm going to share it with everybody. So
Yes.
voice note journals for the busy people or the people who can't sit
I
still while
love
you're doing
that.
a chore, or like if no one's awake or whatever.
Mhm.
Get your iPod, like your ear pods in, talk to yourself, purge out everything you're thinking as if you're
That's so
journaling,
good.
then listen back.
Yes.
And then
Mm.
listen back though, as if your friend is talking to you, because we always have like a judgment or like a conversation in our head of like, well, if they would just do this, like this would happen. And talk to yourself like that. And that is your way of processing, not only just purging it out, but then getting clear on like, what is this version of me missing? Now I can see it, because you'll be able to hear it from a different way than when you're just speaking it. Sometimes we just speak and we're like,
Oh
I don't
my
even know
God,
what the
I
fuck I just
love
said.
that.
But you listen back
Mm.
and you're like, okay, if this was someone else talking, what would they need to do to solve the problem? And then what does that person want to feel? And there's
Mm.
your answer. And every day you do that, you're going to find more of an answer. And you can even do this on a walk and as a way to meditate as well, because you're calming the fluctuations of the mind. You're just getting them out in a different way rather than stopping them. You're allowing them. And
Yeah.
I think that's why people avoid meditation, because they're thinking, I have to stop something. I have to be present. I have to do this. I have to. Instead, how can we allow? That's all we're doing.
Oh,
We can't quiet our thoughts. We can't quiet the world. We are just like the river. We're just allowing. How do we allow the flow to occur, but detach from it? And if
Mhm.
we
that,
can
you know what?
separate into people.
Because you're
Yeah.
not judging it, what you're talking about. Like, I love that advice, because it's like,
Yeah.
you're not judging it the same way. I think when you keep
Yeah.
things in your head, like anything, whether you're putting it on paper or you're into a voice note or you're making like vlogs that you never share, it's just for you. It's like it externalizes what's happening in a
Yeah.
way where you can see clearly. And I think that helps us to be more
Yeah.
compassionate. It's almost like the idea of, thinking, when you think about your inner child, like you picture like little you, and you're kind of like,
Mhm.
what would you have told little you? Or which,
Yeah.
with the situation you're struggling with, if you're not liking what's happening in life right now, and you feel maybe it's possible you want to diverge from that, it's like, how would you advise that person? And I feel like hearing yourself
Yes.
talk about it helps you to look at it more compassionately. I think sometimes
Mhm.
we're resistant to sit down because we're so used to bullying ourselves in our heads.
Yeah.
But once
Yes.
you can see it
And it's
more,
all the shoulds and the coulds. You should
yeah,
meditate. You should journal. You should do this. And
right.
I'm like, I should just allow. So how about
Mm.
That's
that?
it.
Stop
Right. It's
shitting on
like,
me.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
I should just
yeah.
learn about myself. I should create
Mm.
a relationship with myself. I should hold
Oh,
space for myself. I should listen to
Yes.
myself. I should advise myself. Like, why are we seeking counsel so much from other people when we have it all here? And we just
Mm.
have to be, we
yeah.
don't allow it. We're waiting for somebody
Well,
else to answer our
I
questions.
mean,
We're waiting for
if
someone
you
else
think,
to tell us where to go, what to do.
but
Just,
often we've become bullies, right? Especially, I think,
yeah,
Mhm.
especially people who are neurodivergent, because we're so used to not feeling enough by society
yeah,
standards that we've actually become someone who's cruel to us. And it's kind of like,
Yeah.
you don't want to
mhm,
hang out with that person. So it's like, why would you want to
Mhm.
get
100%.
still? Why would you want to be alone with you? Because you're mean to you. Like, you're a jerk to
Yeah,
you.
Right.
Yeah. So I think like
yeah,
that compassion needs to be cultivated. And
yeah.
I
Yeah.
love this: stop shitting on yourself. Stop shitting
Yes.
on yourself,
I didn't make
because
that up. I heard that from someone.
I know I've heard it from somewhere too, but say, oh, no, it's okay. We can trademark it.
We can pretend I did it. I can play along.
It's just so good. It's just so good because there's so much of that, like, with the ADHD stuff.
From the moment we're little, like I just keep thinking I've been thinking about my parenting a lot and catching myself in the act of talking to my kids and talking more at my kids, like, why are you doing this? You shouldn't be doing this. You should do this. You should. And I'm like, how about you shut up? Like, shut up, man. Like, why are you always shoulding like all day long? Because you're fearful that you're failing in some way because you've been shit on for so long and everyone's constantly telling you, oh, you should buy a planner. You should do this. You should do this. Oh, how about you get this vacuum? How about you do this? And I'm like, how about everyone shut up? Because I already have 20,000 things in here telling me I should do this and I'm not. And it's like, I'm catching myself doing the same because we're so conditioned from birth to be a certain way. Like the moment we're born is like, who is this person going to become? How am I going to shape them? And instead it's like, you're not doing like you think you're doing something. You're just wounding. You're not shaping. You're deconstructing this human that's already perfectly them. And now all we're doing is deconstructing the river that just needed to flow. And we're just constantly putting like these little dams in the way of their freaking life and making it 10 times harder.
Yeah. Literally. And it's like thank you. When you start to notice like for yourself and for others, right? Like that critic, that inner critic. And, someone like when I hear people vocalize it, like makes me cringe, right? Because I've worked so hard on it over the years on like not being critical of myself. And I'm like, don't talk to my friend that way. Like if someone's like being super self-deprecating.
Hey, you pulled me out before.
Yes,
all
ma'am.
the time. I'm still working at it. But that's the thing. It's like, give yourself compassion if you are the inner critic, because if you do that more than you do the positive, it's a hard thing to change. Yeah.
But it's like, but that phrase too, like, don't talk to my friend that way. Also realizing how to treat yourself as your own best friend. Like when you, like what you were saying, Paige, of like externalizing it, whether it's journal, voice note, whatever, of like externalizing that, what does this person need, rather than like finding the flaws. Like we're so kind of programmed to do that most often that it's like, okay, no, like sit with compassion. Like if your sister, if your best friend, if your like loved one was sitting in front of you telling you this, like how would you respond to them? With so much compassion, with so much love, with so much encouragement. And like, how can we turn that mirror on ourselves and start to speak to ourselves that way and lift ourselves up rather than freaking bringing ourselves down?
And it takes practice, right? Like I don't know about you guys, but like it was hard for me to do that at first. Like I remember when I first learned about the inner critic, and I was kind of like, oh, a lot of this comes from how I was spoken to. And even if it was well-meaning, very critical. And it's so easy for us to internalize this. Like, why, especially when you struggle, I think, to like keep your things organized or you focus that voice inward very easily. And because it happens so young, you don't even realize what's going on in there. And when you start to unpack it, you're like, oh no, okay, I need some heavy duty counter conditioning now. And I've heard this, there's an exercise I heard, and I didn't do this when I started my self-love journey. My self-love journey started with telling myself nice things in the mirror, into my eyes. And that feels so cringe. When you're like, you don't even believe it. Like you look at yourself and you're like, you're a bully. You don't believe I'm good. And you're kind of like, I swear I do.
I'm trying.
And you're trying to believe it. Yeah. And it's like, okay,
so hard.
But there's an exercise I heard that's even better. That's like, talk to yourself like you would talk to like a beloved pet, or like talk to your dog. Like you're like, oh, you're the best dog. Oh, you're the best. And to just pour that love into yourself, because that's what you deserve to hear. And I think for people who didn't get that, and who gets perfection of that all the time, like you inevitably had a critical teacher, critical parent, critical whatever, but what we deserved was that level of love constantly. So it's like, all right, you got to compensate for this now, and it's going to feel cringe at first, but honest to God, like it clicks at a certain point where your self-love it stops being just things you're saying to yourself in the mirror. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
you start to actually like feel genuine compassion from the inside.
Mm.
And I think that's what allows, you know, the messy magic to start emerging, you know,
Yeah.
with that.
Well, it's really
from a
interesting
nurturing
that you
space.
talked like when you talked about like self-love, my idea of self-love has like drastically changed where I had it in meditation. I was like, holy crap, I actually do love myself so much. I could have easily ended my life when I was having those suicidal thoughts. Like I begged every day to just like die. And part of me was like, you're not giving up. And I would have those big feelings and I would purge them all out. And then I'd get up and I'd keep going and I'd buy a
Mm.
new book and I'd do a new thing. And I just got full body chills when I said it. And I'm probably gonna cry. So I instantly heard like someone who hates themselves does not keep going. They don't keep going. And so self-love doesn't have to be mushy gushy. It has to be showing up in the mess, being there. Because I know a lot of people will need this because so many people who are neurodivergent are addicts, are self-harmers, and
Yes.
we are not flawed. So people who love themselves show up when it's a shit show. They show that's unconditional love. So you don't have to talk to yourself in the mirror all the time as a like, oh, you're so cute. I love you so much. You have to be like, hey, you get your ass up. It's time to move. Like, yes, we're sad,
Mm.
but get the fuck up and keep going because we love
Yes.
ourselves too much. So feel what you need, get it out, say whatever you need to get out, and then we can put our bad girl pants on and get the fuck out the door and do the thing we need to do, or men too. And that is the deepest love you can have for yourself. It's the not giving up and knowing that it doesn't have to be perfect and accepting that. And then I had it, now my head's like, okay, well, a lot of people don't know how to talk to themselves because they've been so criticized. And even myself, like learning how to talk to my kids where I catch myself, I'm like, oh my God, I'm still criticizing them. Like, why can't I do a new way? And it's not that you can't, it's that we just have to find new language. Like we're speaking English and we need to speak Chinese now. And you're not just going to pull that out your ass and be like, oh, okay, let me just talk Chinese today. It's like not going to happen. There's a process of unlearning. So looking at the words that we speak to ourselves. So doing the voice note and listening back, you can then hear the negative self-talk and write down those phrases and then freaking ask Google, go into like chat GPT and say, what are opposite phrases I can use instead of these? And give yourself, now we have technology to help us move faster and learn the new language 10 times faster. So like that is the process that needs to happen. It's like we're so focused on like the critical and thinking about like how do I do this, what do I do, and like, well, this is what you need to do, what is the problem, and I don't have the language, I don't have the communication skills, and I don't have the necessary tools, so how do I get there? And it's like it's taken me so long to get to this point where now I'm finding solutions rather than just criticizing and going down that spiral of like, you're such a shit show. Like you can't get it together. Yeah. You suck at being a parent. You suck at doing this. And it's like, no, I don't have the tool. I don't have it. So it's hard to let your river flow when you have all of these sticks in there. You got to pull that shit out and let it flow. And that's how you do it, is just finding the new ways and tools. But you can love yourself and still not be perfect and still not be mushy and gushy. And sometimes you have to be tough on yourself because you're the only person who's there all the time to pull your ass up and out. Go ahead.
Yeah. Talking about that was fucking awesome. Thank you, Paige. Yeah. Circling back to that question, like, how do I want to feel? Right. Like that question can seem so out of reach. However, like thinking about myself and my best friend, like I'm one that really had severe anxiety. And that's like where I leaned towards. My husband and my best friend both like lean towards depression and both, you know, all neurodivergent. Right. And so like we can understand it from different sides of that spectrum of like where each other's coming from. And like sometimes I see like vibration and happiness, like right from us on a scale, like a ladder. You know, you'll see on our pages, we talk about like the vibrational scale of consciousness, and it's like a ladder, right? And sometimes you're right around the middle, you're hanging around like apathy, or you're lower into fear or despair, and you're just like wake up and you're just like, this is a shit day. Like I am not well. And it's like, okay, like kind of what both of you are saying, right? Like there's
Yeah.
two sides of this. Like you can like reparent, and like sometimes self-love is a little bit of tough love, and you'd be like, listen, like we're gonna do some practices even though we don't fucking want to right now,
Mm.
because we need to get ourselves like one rung up on the ladder. Like, you know, I've had, you know, friends and people like use medication for like a short term just to get themselves like one rung up on the ladder so that they can do the practices to raise their baseline, so that like they can start actually doing the things, going to the gym, eating right, you know, meditating, like focusing on gratitude, like the things that raise them up the ladder. But like if they can't even reach the rung, you know, sometimes you need like extra support in some kind of way.
100%.
And yeah, it's like being like, I know you don't want to do this right now, but this is essential to pick yourself back up. And like how we feel is dictates everything. It's our life. Like it is literally our life. Yeah.
I like, I love that, the one level up, like I think a lot of this is like permission to do the thing that helps you feel better, whatever that is. And I think sometimes one of the things I know that's stuck in the way for me is just allowing myself to separate from the group. Like, for example, like I think like a lot of, you know, dysregulated, especially neurodivergent, but dysregulated anybody, I used to drink a lot, party a lot. That was my sort of like, I'm just like you signal, the way to like cut social anxiety and then be part of the group. And like, I don't drink now. And that was uncomfortable, especially for people, like people know you as a certain thing, and it's difficult to break out of that. But it was like, okay, and this is why I think starting with talking in the mirror, for me, it helped, because it was like, okay, now I'm at the level of self-support where I'm like, I can either choose me and my mental health, my happiness, or I can choose to be part of the group and just throw myself away. And it's like, that's what I used to do. Like I would do that. And that made me so sad, realizing that, where I was like, oh my God, like I wasn't just not thinking about myself. I was actively disregarding myself, feeling like shit, all this. And it's like those feelings of like mood imbalance and whatever, it's not worth it. And I think sometimes it's like, it's difficult to grow those boundaries, but it's essential, and it's like a muscle. And I think sometimes we need to remember that it's like, it's not going to be easy to do the self-loving thing, but it's gonna get easier, and you build a snowball, and then that snowball starts to roll down, you know, it gets easier, but at first it can be extremely uncomfortable, and you got to do it in a lot of different
my mind
areas.
is always like, I used to read all these self-help books, and then I couldn't like find like, well, okay, well, what do I do? So then as you're talking, I just wrote like, first get comfortable with talking to yourself, learning how you talk about yourself. How do you talk to yourself? Like being aware, and then assess it. So like if you want to use the voice notes, do that. If you want to read your journal back, do that. And then the next steps. And as you were talking, you were talking about like this, I don't even know what you said, but it was just like, all I heard was like jumping stones. Like, look, when we have to cross the river, or the floor is lava, I think like the game floor is lava. It's like, okay, if they get over there, we're not going to jump straight there. Like what's right in front of us? Like that's where, like the moment you want to start this, it's just like, what, like Kim said, what is that next step? Like write down where the goal is. That's fine. Like you have to have a goal, but start, where is the next step? And like that can be extremely hard for us neurodivergents, because we see everything and we already know the path forward,
the
and
whole
we're like, okay, there's this and that and this and that, and I'm like, where do I go? And it's like,
look at the
that
next
to me was
step.
like, the hardest part
Not
too.
the
It's
whole
like,
staircase.
I have the whole staircase though, like can't I just like jump to, like I'll just jump to that next part, like I'm just gonna bypass. And I bypassed a lot, and that came up this past month, a lot of anger and like rage and resentment. I was like, oh my God, I'm back where I was. Like, what is this? And because I bypassed. And so it happened. It's okay. You can go back. Okay. Don't worry. It's like a video game, just like restart.
Sam, what are those like mantras, affirmations that we wrote down in the beginning.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm thinking of like start messy is
Yeah.
definitely right here.
Yes. Yeah. We got start messy. We got the done is better than perfect.
Mhm.
We also have magic is messy. And
Yeah.
because I think like we haven't talked about this yet, but we, even to set up this podcast, right? Like this was an interesting journey for us because it involved a lot of like letting go of what we. Okay, wait, let me back up a little bit. I feel like there's a thing with ADHD where I know for me, I've been afraid to let things go before, thinking that made me frivolous. Because like as a kid, tried a whole bunch of shit. Actually, I'm not different now. I try a lot of different things. And I think that speaks to our openness. But
Mhm.
because you get shit from that from other people, where
Yes.
it should, oh, you're not committed to
You're a
it. Oh, you don't
quitter. Yeah.
finish things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I
It's
was
like,
gonna say. Like, am I quitting this
right?
because I'm scared of what's gonna happen, or am I
Yes.
quitting this because it doesn't feel right?
Because
And
I
it's
don't
like you
like it.
gaslight yourself the whole time. Like,
Totally.
I'm the crazy. I can't make the
Right.
decision.
If you think about it, it's like if you've got someone who tries one thing and does that one thing, cool, they just do that one. And if you're the person who tries 12 and quits 11, so you can find the thing that you do, well, there's no shame in that, but that's what we learn.
Yes.
So
Mm.
there's this like gripping of things we've committed to and a fear of letting them go. So we didn't plan originally to do a podcast. This was going to be a coaching program. And
yes.
I think we whole staircased it. We, we were talking 17 steps ahead, not next stair. And I think it got complicated and it not even that it was complicated, but it stopped aligning for us. Like we just didn't, we thought about it and we're like, it stopped being fun. I know for me personally, I was kind of like, does this mean I can't commit to things that have a lot of like details and it's like, no, just your magic, the three of you is in sharing your stories, like using your voices in, creating a space for people to feel like here it is. It's messy. And I think we were afraid initially to let ourselves be messy. And we've done this at every step. It's like, okay, if we don't want to do an intro, we're not going to do an intro. If we don't want to do like just letting ourselves do it in a way that feels good, because again, like done's better than perfect. Getting the message out there is better than polishing the message for 12 weeks and having it maybe resonate, maybe not. Like the authentic us is so much more powerful anyway.
Yeah.
And it was like kind of scary to admit that at first. And now it's like, oh, you kind of grow into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it got easier, right? It got easy, got way easier when we like were able to let go of that and have that radical honesty discussion with one another. Like there's so much radical honesty in relationships that is just so freeing. And I love, like, my aunt and uncle told me when I was 17, no is an acceptable answer. And like,
love that.
just it's like being able to speak that truth. Like when you guys, came to me after I got back from Costa Rica and, said what was on your hearts, I was like, yeah, that feels so right. Like that makes so much sense. And the magic is when we come together and just like riff off one another and share our stories. And like people need to hear it. People need access to it. So
yes,
that's what we're doing.
And look, when things align, like look how fast we've moved. It's like once you realize like, okay, I'm not holding on to this because it's right, but I don't want to do it. Like sometimes you legitimately need to quit that major, leave that job, whatever. Like what you're trying to do is forced. And if it feels like force, not flow, it's not right. Because there's always elements of things you don't want to do. Like, and I feel like we've experienced this also where like admin can be a struggle, right? Where you're writing captions and you're doing things that aren't as engaging, but we'll do it together. And like we're basically body doubling, which can be, powerful for like ADHD. It's like doing something in a group gives you new energy. But there's a big difference between like kind of having to bring light to the things that aren't as fun, like finance or whatever, and then holding on to something that just isn't working. And I just think as with the powerful energy we've got, like as, spiritual beings, it's like you don't want to waste it on something that doesn't align.
Yeah,
Yes.
100%.
Truth.
And it's perfect timing because with the full moon here too, it's like
Mhm.
asking us to like revolutionize our life. Like, what is here? What are we letting go of? How are we gonna sit here this week and ask ourselves, what do we need to let go of? What are we not facing
Yeah.
within ourselves that needs
Yeah.
to change?
Yeah.
Mhm.
A friend's quote was coming to me. He said, like, if you're miserable at your job and you spend most of your time at work, you're miserable most of the time.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Ooh, that hits. That hits. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like,
100%.
check your life. Like I had a coach say this to me, like, check your life. Like, what are the things in your life that, are less than a 5 out of 10, or like that don't light you up, and evaluate those. Like, is that something you want to keep doing?
Yeah.
Because your life, like you said, Paige, like coming back to that question, how do I want to feel? Like, if I want to feel joy, if I want to feel freedom, if I want to feel peace, if I want to feel abundant, like, then I need to check myself and check my life and say, like, what are the things that are aligned? What are the things that aren't aligned? And how do I feel joy today? Not tomorrow, not next week, not, next month. Like, how do I feel joy today?
Yeah. 100%.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think the last concept or the last thing I have here that we didn't say yet, but I think is important just because I think the phrase is so good, is just the sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah.
That's the podcast, that's careers, that's anything that you've sunk energy into that you're afraid to let go because of what that might mean about you, that you're frivolous, that you're this, you're that. No, like the sunk cost fallacy, like if you are committed to something that you wouldn't currently choose in this moment that no longer feels good, it's a fallacy that you've sunk that cost. Like you're continuing to pay for something that is draining you. Just don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, I can speak from 7 years of college, 5 years of certification, 10 years in the hospital, and then an 8-year relationship. And it was like, am I willing to let this all go? Am I willing to face the judgment of my parents, of my peers, of everyone else, in being willing to walk away from this? And it was like, yeah, my happiness is worth it.
Yeah. What's the cost? Yeah.
If it costs your peace, it's too expensive.
Let it go. Cut it out.
Yeah. That was good.
I love this. I feel like we've brought it all together, ladies.
I think so too. You know what? You're welcome. No, I'm just kidding. I hope
Thank you and goodbye.
Yes. All right, my beloved, our beloved listeners, if you've made it to the end, thank you. Thank you. Sam, did you want to say one more thing?
I was just going to say, if you've made it to the end, then you are at the 3rd episode of our kind of inaugural first 3. And we will see you next week. Depending on when you're listening to this.
Indeed. And yes, you can find us on Spotify and I believe on YouTube as well. And we have an Instagram. You can connect with us, ADHD Awakening Podcast. We would so appreciate it to know that you exist. So please hop over there and say hi. And if you have any questions or any topics that you would want us to talk about, we would love to hear from you. We appreciate you and we're so excited to keep this going. Thank you.
Yay.
Yay. We
Yay.
love you.
We love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Gonna dance the whole way out.